All right, good morning. We're on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with Jim Cramer. All right, Jim, before we talk about the markets, in an hour and a half, you're going to have your monthly club call.
Yeah, I mean, it is, people have been asking for length. They've been asking, well, good cadence, but they want all the information, so I'm going to give everything I can. I'm actually going to talk about how to reposition on the fly, what we did right and what we did wrong, what disciplines we violated and which ones we obeyed, how when we violated our disciplines, it cost us money. When we obeyed our disciplines, it made money. These are all teaching tools. Remember, the call is a teaching call. Of course, at the beginning, I tell you what I think, what I see, and what I worry about. But everything is designed to teach you to be better at handling your money. And the best way to do that is to show you the mistakes, but also the wins. And we'll have both. And I think it's exciting. I do multiple drafts, and then I rip it up, and I do it again, and I rip it up, and we have the market up today. But I think it's going to be rat-a-tat-tat at one point. I do it very, very machine gun-like, but there's also there's plenty of grist and about how to reposition. And I'm looking at today, and I'm thinking, ooh, did I reposition right? But what can I say? We had to do what he had to do, and you'll hear why. And I think you'll be, I think you'll say, ooh, maybe I have to do the same thing. That's my purpose.
And it's a live call. And Jim, you give us market updates during the show.
Oh, this thing is. I mean, last night my wife and I were at a party, and I said, "Look, I gotta go. I got the, I gotta work on this thing." And I worked on it this weekend. I worked on it every day. Zev and Jeff, we worked, our team. We work over and over on it. Why? Because it's the most important thing we do for the club, and we also answer, of course, questions from club members. And I feel very strongly that this is my chance to teach. A lot of people, including my wife, were saying, why don't you quit TV to teach? My teaching moment is this conference call. Well, the product's a teaching product, but the conference call is probably the thing where I try to impart what I've learned, and I actually hark back to when I was a hedge fund manager today. I tend not to do that, but I'm doing it on this call.
Not too late to join the club.
No, I mean, come on, just trial it. I mean, look, am I shameless and naked? After spending, 50 hours on a speech, yes. It's really important, and I would have everybody listen because I pour my heart out on this stuff. So I am shameless when I work really hard.
Okay, actionalertsplus.com. Meanwhile, Jim, markets are up today. Yesterday's declines, you say, were because of those Fed minutes.
Yeah, and we're trading off of anything that, when you have a thin market, someone who takes action, for instance, someone today who said, look, the president kind of said, maybe no action in Syria. The president kind of said, look, I could have fired Mueller if I wanted to in December, Mr. Failing New York Times. So the two things that people are most worried about, and I have this in a real money piece, people are worried about what would happen if he fires Mueller, and I trace out what happened when Nixon fired Archibald Cox via the Attorney General. And then Syria. Because there's 8,000 advisors from Russia in Syria. That's supposed to be the number, and whether that would cause some sort of war. Now, my problem with all this is, you know what? We have the earnings tomorrow. So, don't do these big macro calls when tomorrow we've got the earnings. That's not the way to play it. We had Bed Bath last night. That was terrible. A really bad call. We had Delta this morning. I didn't see the love, but people like it. And we had BlackRock, which talked about inflows, but BlackRock is a cash machine, and they do quite well. And that's what people are going to be not trading off of, but investing on. So if you're just trading off the tweets, here's my suggestion to you. When the president doesn't bash Amazon, go buy Amazon. There. And that's what we've been doing for Action Alerts. I talk about that today.
So to sum up, you're expecting some sort of earnings put in the market to keep a floor on stocks.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that the numbers are going to be good. I just think that the most important thing is that the numbers matter. And what I don't want people to do, I mean, I'm sure some of the banks are going to miss. It's a way, of course. But I just think that what people should recognize is beginning tomorrow, it's not trading off of what you think psychologically is happening, other than China, which does matter for the numbers. It's going to be investing off of companies' reports. So don't get caught doing this. I mean, look, the market's up 300 as I talk. The Dow's up 300. The Dow is down 200. You'll drive yourself crazy. Just find stocks of companies you like and look at those conference calls, make decisions, and stick with it. Stay the course. Don't flit in and out. Don't buy, look, if you're a really great hedge fund manager, you buy it down 200, you flip it at the opening. God love it. But most people, I think, are just looking for opportunities, and the opportunities are going to start in earnest tomorrow. And that's my point. I mean, last night the only opportunity was Bed Bath. I come home and I was working on the speech, working on a conference call, what we call the retention speech. And the only quarter that I looked at was Bed Bath, and it was horrendous. And they did such a bad job. They talked about just things that were unfathomable about what they're trying to do, and they're all over the place, and it was very poorly orchestrated. But that was it. Tomorrow begins at 9 o'clock. Yes, tomorrow at between 8 and 10 is one of the worst moments for me because there's so many companies reporting. There's a couple of days. There's 5 days in the next 4 weeks that I simply can't do my job. It drives me crazy. I always talk about it with Faber.
So when it comes to Bed Bath & Beyond, I mean, is this a company that's just sort of stretched too thin, doing too much?
Yeah, I think to some degree, and Amazon's after them, and they weren't willing to say that they were going to do better now that Bye Bye Baby doesn't have, Babies R Us a competition from Toys R Us, and they didn't take that bait. I went to a One Kings Lane pop-up store last year, and they're talking about putting more furniture in, but they didn't say where they really are. They're talking about a web strategy, but it's kind of amorphous. They're talking about and how well that's doing, but it wasn't evident. They spent a huge amount of money on buybacks at much higher levels. It was very disappointing, and that's reflected in the stock.
Yeah, down something like 17% this morning.
Yeah, well, there's just, other than a good balance sheet, I mean, they cut numbers. I was hoping that they could do 3. I mean, that's wishful. They're going to do 2. So you have a stock that looks like it was selling at 7 times earnings. That was selling it turns out at like 12 times earnings. And 11, if they hit the high end, a little bit better. But it was dispiriting, to say the least, particularly for people who thought that with Toys R Us out, that Bye Bye Baby would have a big leg up, and they didn't. They kind of threw cold water on that.
You know, Jim, for anyone worried about Facebook, they should watch your interview last night with the Gap CEO, who was very bullish on social media ads.
Thank you.
Were you surprised?
No, because they have to reach where the buyers are, and the buyers are millennials, and the buyers are women having children, and it really is. The reason why Facebook's so great is you can target that. Now, Facebook, they didn't do. I'll mention this in my conference call. I wanted that independent I wanted a Ted Wells from Paul Weiss. I wanted a Ken Feinberg, who did the Macondo, and he did the GM Ignition, he did 9/11 claims. I wanted someone independent to come in who was not connected with Zuckerberg, and and we're not getting that. We're getting people who are directly being paid by the company, and they need someone independent that is brought in by the board, or else what's going to happen is Congress will come. Now, Congress is so sloppy, it's going to be hard to figure out how they're going to be able to regulate. But remember, in Europe, they came up with regulations, and now that Facebook intends to comply with the European regulations, but what you don't want is a belief that if you put your name in, it's immediately sold, which they're not going to do. What you do want is to get your story out. And I never thought that that there was any expectation of privacy. And the Congress people seem to think that there is, and people are being ripped off by Facebook. But there was a moment yesterday that was so disingenuous when Z-Man was asked whether he's going to switch his business model. And he said basically that he had no idea what the congressperson was talking about. And what's the matter with that is that in a few weeks he'll have his conference call, and all he do is talk about the business model. So give me a break.
Yeah, some of those lawmakers needed to do some more homework.
Yes, they do. And sometimes age eludes them. I'm lucky. I have a kid who does a lot of Instagram. He doesn't go on Facebook. Instagram owned by Facebook. But a lot of it's to do branding and rebranding. And the only way to have that happen is to have no expectation of privacy whatsoever, have it out there. So the Congress people really didn't understand what they were doing. But obviously, if you're trying to rig an election, Facebook seemed to be your best hope. And they really fell down. And one of the things I didn't like about Zuckerberg, about his testimony, was how many sloppy things, how many things they didn't do right, how many things that they kind of cut corners on in order to make a lot of money. And that was dispiriting to me. And I'm kind of glad that we sold some when we could.
All right, Jim, we're going to keep.
For action.
Yes, we're going to keep talking about stocks on actionalertsplus.com, and I hope everyone joins Jim today at 11:30 for your live
I'm sure
call.
there's some people out there who just watch this or just read my tweets, and people could say, well, Jim, you keep promoting this conference call, and I would say, I will promote when I can teach. This is teaching.
Okay, Jim, thank you so much.